Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of the 4040 Vision podcast, the ultimate sports history pod where hindsight is 40/40. Before we get started, let's pay some bills and hear from our presenting sponsors. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 4040 Vision podcast. I'm your host, Khaled Abdallah, and I'm joined today by a special guest, Saso Nady, a former player for the Egyptian national team. How's everything going today?
It's going well. Yeah, good to be here. Thank you for having me and excited to get this started.
Awesome. And she's calling us all the way from Cairo. So this is a big deal. We're going international, going global here. You're actually the second Egyptian national team player that we've had on the podcast. A friend of mine plays for the men's national team. So we're covering all sides here. So let's start all the way in the beginning. You grew up in Egypt. Where did you grow up in Egypt, and when did you start playing sports?
Yeah, so I am born and raised in Cairo. I lived in Cairo my whole life. Um, I'm the youngest of four siblings, so all my siblings kind of all of them played sports. So like kind of like being born, it was like no brainer that I'm gonna like get into something. I think I played a bunch of things first before sticking with basketball. So that was kind of interesting. But I come from like a sports family, so parents played sports, my siblings played sports. And then kind of once they settled into basketball, my mom was like, give it a try, see if you're gonna like it. I hated it at first, and then I just wanted to, hoop by myself, like on the side. But then yeah, I got into the team, and then fell in love with the game, and then started really young. And then since then, I've only played basketball.
What other sports did you play growing up?
I played a little bit of swimming, and then I hated the water.
Okay.
And then I played gymnastics, and then the coaches were not very friendly, so I was like, no, I don't want to do this. And then took some time. I was like, you know what, I not don't want to play any team sports. But then like joined basketball, and like that everything changed.
Okay. I would have suspected like soccer or handball. I know handball is a big sport over there, tennis or something, but so mostly individual stuff and then basketball.
Yep.
So when did you start taking basketball seriously? Like when was it something that you really focused on?
I think since early age, really. Like I mentioned, like my older three siblings all played basketball at that point, so they were all heavily involved in the game. And they would like train me, teach me like how to dribble, like do all that kind of stuff. So I kind of knew that I had the skill from like early on, and it was just a matter of like developing it and like working more on my stuff. But pretty early on, because I'm very competitive, so I kind of like always wanted that like next thing. So once I got into the team, and like started that like competing, even like you're 5 and 6 year olds, like that's nothing, but just that kind of like mentality was kind of like huge for me, and that kind of like set me up for success later on.
Mhm. And what teams did you play on growing up? Was it like club teams, competitive teams, recreational teams? What was that structure like when you were maybe in like middle school age?
Yeah, so we play here at club teams. You can play in school, but it's more recreational. So we play at clubs. So I played at the Egyptian Shooting Club, and that's where my siblings played also. So that's where I played, and then that's pretty much where I played all of my years in Cairo up until college, and then I like left New York. So I played at the shooting club.
Okay. So even in high school, you played there as well? You stayed at the same club?
Yep.
Okay. And at what point did you start thinking about playing in the U.S. at the college level?
I think once you hit the point where you like start thinking about the national team and then competing like internationally and like joining international tournaments and stuff, like kind of like the under 13, under 14 is when you're like, okay, like it's time to take it serious and see like how far you can go. I think that's the time where I kind of like fought ahead, and then was like, um I want to like have a pretty good couple years, like between like the 13 to 16, 17, and kind of like take that to the next level to play college basketball in the US. It's the highest level of playing when you're playing in a college in the US. The competitiveness and the level playing is very, very high. So I was like, this is something that I want to work for, and I think it will benefit me. I mean, at the time, I was only thinking about it athletically, but like,
Hmm.
later on, I realized that it also opened a lot of other doors for me besides the court. But that's kind of was my goal from early on, is that like I'm gonna join the national team, gonna play good years here, um, make a couple international appearances, and then like go to college in the US and play basketball there.
So tell us about some of these international appearances. I believe you played in some Junior Olympics and some other, was it FIBA games as well? Some
Hmm.
Junior FIBA games. Yeah, tell us about that experience. What was that like? Traveling abroad with the national team.
Yeah, it was awesome. I think like besides the fact that you are playing with like the best girls in the country. Like, the team consists of 12 of the best players in the country. So that in itself um, improves your level play and your skill set. But I think more than that too, it was like it taught me a lot of other things, like discipline, like what it means to be responsible. Like, at the end of the day, when you're playing for your club team, you kind of get around with things. There's no such thing at the national team. Like if you're gonna play around, then someone else will replace you. So there are like a lot of other things that you had to take seriously for you to survive, besides just how good you are or how many points you can score. And that includes like being a good teammate. Like no one wants to play with, like a bad person or something like that. So my first international tournament was kind of like, it was the most difficult one in terms of like it was just very eye opening. You had always play
Mm,
at a comfortable level, I would say. Even when you compete here nationally and stuff, like there's still that like element to it, that like familiarity, I would say. But when you play internationally, you just don't know what to expect. You don't know what the level of play is going to be. Um, you don't know how, if we lose one game, you can be out for the rest of the tournament. So there's just that like next level of seriousness to it. And then it definitely gives you a ton of experience. You meet other players, you see other philosophies, other coaches, all of that. So I kind of started with the under 16 national team, and we played like the African tournament, and then we qualified for the World Cup. And then like year after year, from that point was like every year there was a summer of like an international tournament.
mhm. Was there a specific tournament or game where you realized, I belong at this level? I can play, like you said, at the highest level, at the college level in the US?
Um, I think all along, like, or since you joined that, like the national team, you kind of get that confidence booster, I would say. And you kind of have to make yourself believe that you belong in order for you to survive. Like it's a big like mental game too, um to like question yourself or doubt yourself, or to think like, am I good enough, am I working hard enough, am I doing enough? So part of that is like when you make it to that level, you have to stop with that thinking and think more about, okay, how can I succeed more, how can I make it to the next tournament, how can I get more playing time, how can I help my teammates win? So it's like a mindset shift as well. Um, and then in terms of like a big tournament that I was like, and it's still to this day, I think it's like one of my favorite ever tournaments. Was the Youth Olympic Games in China. Um, and I actually played 3-on-3 there, and it was like very
Oh,
early
that's
on
cool.
with like the
Yeah.
3-on-3. Yeah, it was like, had just started becoming popular and stuff. And we won the African tournament. We had first place, so we
Wow, very cool.
qualified. We went to China, and that was just like a very cool experience. Like not just with other basketball teams or other basketball players, but you're with like a really big sports community. So it was very cool.
Yeah, I'm sure you made a ton of connections with athletes all over the world and things like that. What was your favorite like travel destination that you got to play in?
Travel destination. Um, I don't know, that's a tough one. To be honest, like all of the tournaments that or most of the tournaments that I've been to, we rarely ever had time to explore the cities
Okay.
that we were in.
Sure.
So I don't know if I can even remember, some of the things that I've done besides the games. Um, but I mean, China was cool, Turkey was cool, Russia was interesting, it was cool. Like you get still to see these places and like travel the world, and that itself is a privilege.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't, I think I have them more in my mind where like we won in this tournament, so that's a good memory
Okay.
versus like we lost. So like I don't want to remember that.
All right, so you're focused on the hoop. You're not focused on the
Yeah.
touristy stuff. I can respect that for sure, for sure. So you have all this experience. You're traveling the world with the national team, winning tournaments. What was the recruiting process like? When did schools in the U.S. start reaching out to you? I'm really curious about how this process works out, especially internationally. So what was that like?
Yeah. And I will say too, like, so I went to college in 2016, so that's like, gosh, 7 years ago. And back then it wasn't really all that popular. Like I remember when I was reaching out to colleges and talking with coaches and stuff, I at that time like had known like three total girls from Egypt that like went to colleges in the US. It was, not popular at all. It was like still around the idea of like, parents being worried about like, sending you abroad and all of that. And there weren't
I
a
was
ton of
definitely going to ask
people.
about like the cultural blockers, barriers, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it. I mean, I know Egypt is a pretty conservative place, maybe not just religiously conservative, but socially conservative as well. So maybe you could tell us about that as well and how you overcame that.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I was saying like it wasn't happening a lot at the time, so you just didn't know what to expect. You didn't know how that's gonna happen. But luckily also because of the international experiences I've had and the couple older friends that I had, I was able to um like get some information and stuff. So in terms of, I think there's like two things to that. Like there's like the recruiting process, and then there's like just as you said, getting over like the fear of like traveling abroad. And luckily for me, my family was always supportive of that. Like they knew this is something I wanted, and this is the next level for me. And they kind of saw that, so they did not hold me back at all. If anything, like they were always encouraging me and pushing me. And I mean, of course, there's like an element of fear to it
Hmm.
because you just don't know, and you're sending your child all the way across the world for college. I mean, college is a big thing in itself. So
Yeah,
going
absolutely.
for college across the world, that's like, that's a lot. So, but again, like to me at that point, I was like, I'm very comfortable where I am. I have all of my friends, my family, my community. I already play at the highest level, so I also felt like, okay, but what's next? Like I'm 18 and I've already accomplished so much. Like there's no point, in staying if I really want to develop myself. So that kind of what pushed me. And then the recruiting process was, I don't know, like all over the place. I would say
Hmm.
I had coaches interested in me. Kind of like going into like that senior year and stuff. And as I said, like I was actively looking to, but it was also a matter of like finding the right fit at the right time with the right opportunity, which is hard to know when you are not there because all you're doing is just like through emails and video calls and stuff. So it was a lengthy process to say the least, from like transcripts to highlight tape to everything. And I remember even arriving 3 weeks late because of like visa stuff and
Oh
getting
wow.
over that. Yeah, so it was definitely an exhaustive process, but it was worth it. Definitely worth it.
Yeah. So are you identifying schools and then reaching out, sending your highlight tape? Are they reaching out to you directly or to your coach or your club? Can you give us a little more detail into how that plays out?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So a mix of both, I would say. I had schools reaching out to me that were interested in me, and then I also had my eyes on a couple schools that I was interested in. So you kind of like qualify that way. Like I was trying to see like who meets my requirements, who I'm like comfortable with, or like want to
What
join
were
that
your
program.
requirements? Just out of curiosity, what were your
Just
requirements?
like school record, like program record, you know, how long that program has been around, the coach. I mean, when you talk with players and when you talk with the coach, you're able to tell, you know, are you going to get along with that coach or not, which is a huge thing. You know, the school record, your major, like what I want to study and how good that major is at that school. Destination was also like important. I knew I wanted to be on the East Coast. So mainly like, you know, New York or like Boston or these kind of states. So a couple
Is
of
that to be
factors like
closer to
that.
home?
Um, I think a little bit, yes, but it's
Okay.
also like more familiar. Like I was familiar with New York, you know, and even though I ended up going to a school in upstate New York, which was 6 hours
Yeah.
from the city, so that's like a different story. But yeah, just like you know, a couple of things, and to be honest, at the end of the day, it was still like a shot in the dark. You didn't know 100% what you were signing up for.
For sure, for sure. And so you end up at Roberts Wesleyan, which is a Division two school, like you said, in upstate New York. Why did you choose that? Was there a few other schools you were deciding between? And ultimately, why did you pick Roberts Wesleyan?
Yeah, there was, and it kind of came down to like a few schools. And then I talked with the coach at Roberts, and he um, showed a huge interest in signing me. And he did not have a point guard at the time, and all of that. And it was kind of those things too that like he would take initiative in like getting my paperwork done, and like you know, no, like let's figure this out. Let's get this done. Let's do that. Let's do this. So I kind of just felt comfortable in that regard. And I had no idea where Rochester is. When I tell you, I did not even know it existed. I did not
Yeah,
know it was on the map. But it's just kind of like these things that I talked to assistant coaches. I talked to a couple players from the team. And I was like, you know, like, let's do this. Like, I had thought way too long about it to the point where I was like, I will never make a decision that way. So you just have to take the leap and kind of see where you end up. And that's what I did. And I arrived in September of 2016 and played all 4 years there.
yeah, yeah. So let's get into the basketball, but first, I mean, how was the culture shock of coming from Cairo? I know you've been around the world, so you've seen some different places, but what was it like, being in Rochester, dealing with that weather and just the major change in culture?
Yeah, glad you asked because it wasn't easy. So the weather, I just like, yeah, the lifestyle was very different, for sure. Not so much basketball wise, like it's actually the other things that kind of took me time to adjust to, including like the weather. Like it's very, very cold in upstate New York, nothing like Cairo. So it took, I mean, I still, people said like, you know, oh, you will adjust like after a few months. No, I never adjusted. I would still hate the cold. So the weather was like a big thing for sure. Um, kind of, um, like it was also you're coming in as a freshman, you have older girls on the team, how to navigate that and how to kind of like earn your spot in a different way. And don't get me wrong, like I always worked hard here and stuff, but also like I had reached a very comfortable level of like knowing, oh, like I'm gonna walk into any team and like, you know, get X amount of it. Like I know that, but like when you reach college, everyone starts from scratch. You really have to work for your spot. You really have to earn your spot. And playing with players from with different ages too is something that you have to get used to. There are
Mhm.
like upperclassmen, there's lowerclassmen, all of that. Also navigating academics, like you know, figuring out my classes and like kind of doing both. Like your day would start really early for like a morning lift or a morning workout, and then you would like shower, go straight to class, and then like quickly get something to eat, and then get back to workout number two. You know, so it's just a very different lifestyle, and you kind of at that point have to set your priorities, to kind of know like what are you trying to get out of here. Are you here for the experience? Are you here to really make the most out of it? Are you here to party? You know what I mean? So it
Hmm.
kind of makes you mature really fast in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, you have no choice. I think at that point you're by yourself in a different country, thousands of miles away from home, new culture, all that stuff. So I'm sure you had to grow up really fast. So as far as the basketball, so we talked about the culture shock in being in New York and all that stuff, in upstate New York, just to make sure it's very different from New York City, as I hope people know. But as far as the basketball went, the style, the organization, the way it was played at the college level, did you experience a culture shock there as well?
I mean, I wouldn't call it a complete culture shock. Was it a different level of play? Yeah, 100%.
Hmm.
Um, but I also like expected that. You just did not know exactly what it looked like. But definitely, like, the game is faster, the game is stronger, it's more physical. Some of the rules are also different from like FIBA rules, like college
Yeah,
rules are
yeah.
different. So that's like was something like I had a ton of travels called on me that first year because I was just used to the Euro stip, you know. So like a couple adjustments like that. But definitely like the game, as I said, like because you're also in college now, so the whole level is just like, you know, like way higher than like high school or like what you're used to. Um, so yeah, you just have to be physical, you have to be quicker, you have to be better, you have to always improve. You really can't stay where you are. Like every day you go to practice to get better and to work on your weaknesses, because otherwise you're just gonna, you know, you're not gonna survive.
Mhm. Yeah, and I went through your stats and your game log. You've had some big games over that 4 year stretch. What was the point where you feel again like this is where I belong, and I finally, maybe a point where you felt comfortable with the level, with the speed, with the physicality, and all that as well?
Yeah, I think halfway through freshman year, like kind of took me that first like 2 months of games to, it was like very up and down, till I kind of got the hang of it and was able to, like you said, like, okay, breathe and be like, okay, I know how to do this. I know what's going around here. Like I belong, like you say. So I think like the first like semester or so is kind of when I like experienced it all. So like going into that second semester or that like second half of the season was when I was like, okay, like I know, what to do here. I know how to get things done. So it definitely took a couple months to adjust to everything, the lifestyle, the level of play, my schedule, all of that. But I think by the end, or by like, yeah, by the second half of the season, I was like pretty comfortable at that point.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure that was difficult because you had the extra layer of getting used to a new place, a new country, and a new school, all that stuff as well. So, credit to you for that. So, what was the highlight of your college career? Is it possible to pick one or two?
Um, Highlight. So I was actually gonna transfer after my first year because I was like, I like it, but I'm not sure if this is where I want to spend my next 3 years for multiple reasons. But mainly because of like Rochester is very different from Cairo. Cairo is a huge city. It's loud. It's busy. There's a ton of people. It's warm. It's nice. Rochester is nice, but in different type of nice. But it's also very quiet. It's very cold. It's just very different from what I was used to, and that kind of was hard to adjust to, even with the basketball and even with academics. That was like, I don't know if I want to do this for the next or 3 years or so. Um, but kind of, and that will like kind of what drew me back was the people. Like Roberts is not the biggest school. It's like kind of like a small school in Rochester. But the people that I met that first year and that helped me get through the transition, the friendships I made, the professors I met, all of that was kind of like, wow, like I really did not like this place at first, but
Sure.
now, with all the relationships I have and with all the connections I made, this place feels cozy and it feels nice, and people are supporting me in ways that I, just did not think of. So it kind of like made me think more about that aspect of the experience and not just the outside factors that you would think of, I
Sure.
would say. And kind of like, here we are 7 years later. These are like some of my best friends now that I made in college and some of the best people I ever like interacted with.
That's awesome. Those I'm sure those bonds are lifelong. You guys spent a lot of years together. And that competitive fire and stuff that really builds the bonds and the relationships. So as your college career was starting to wrap up, were you thinking about playing professionally anywhere? Was that a prospect for you at all?
Yeah, and funny enough, I used to joke with other girls on the team. When they were saying like, oh, like senior year and that's it, that's like the last year of basketball for us, and I'm like, how can you do that? Like, how can you have a scheduled retirement date? Like, that couldn't be me. And my goal all along was to finish college and either like go play overseas or go back home and play, for my club or a different club and like, play professionally. But it was always the goal to keep going and keep playing more. And up until senior year, really, that was the plan. I'm gonna finish and got my degree and everything, and it's time for the next thing. And then COVID happened.
Mm,
Um, End of my senior year, right before my senior year ended, and that's kind of when things changed for me, and changed in terms of like it changed how I think and changed my perspective of how I view things. And during my senior year, also, I was doing my first year of my master's because I finished my undergrad in 3 years. So I started my master's during my senior year. Um, and kind of like, I wasn't sure if I'm going to finish my master's or not because I was going to be done with senior year and then like go back home or go overseas. And, chances of finishing my master's was kind of low because I would have to stay an extra year. But then COVID happened, and I got trapped in the US. I
mhm.
couldn't leave. So I was there, like, I was like, okay, like I'll finish this year, like end of my master's and stuff. But it kind of was the time that forced me to think about what do I actually want. Like I always had that notion of like, okay, next year I'm gonna play this, next year I'm gonna play there, next year I'm gonna do this. But it was always like basketball focused that I I didn't know anything else. And I was like, wait, is this still like I know I want this and I know I love this, but like it's okay to explore other areas of my life too. And I've never done that. It was always, basketball, basketball, basketball. So when COVID happened and there was no more basketball, I kind of had that time to think like, well, what if I don't go overseas or what if I don't go back home and play? Like, what if I don't want to play anymore? What are the possibilities? Um, so I was like, okay, well, at least I'm gonna stay for that fifth year to finish my master's. It was a 2 year program. So to finish my master's and then like decide after that. And I mean, it was the pandemic anyway, so nothing much was going on.
Mhm.
And then by the time I finished my master's, I had like I really wanted to like I was like, I've devoted so much and so many years of my life to basketball. Like I feel like it's time to, explore what else is out there. Like I want to have a career. I want to use the masters that I just put my heart and soul
Sure, sure.
into making something, out of myself besides my sports career. So I made the decision and like stayed in the US and I was like, I think this is it. Um, and it was the hardest decision I ever had to make. Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah. What was that transition like from, all basketball all the time since you were a kid to I believe you started working in corporate America, things like that. What was that transition like? And did you miss the game?
Yeah, it was hard to say the least. It was went through like an identity loss phase where I just did not know who I am if I'm not playing, like I all my life I was programmed to like, even introduce myself. Hi, I'm Saso, like I play basketball. Like hi, you don't know what else is out there besides your sports identity. And that was huge
Mhm.
because it was just a phase of your life. I mean, even if I had continued playing, there will still come a time where I retire. So like the fact that we just make like sports our entire identity and forget who we are without that jersey or without that ball is scary. So the transition was hard, and also it was COVID at the time. I was still in the U.S., so I did not have a lot of family support or any of that. So it just wasn't. It was a very like challenging time. My therapist helped me a lot with that. I'm very thankful for him for that. But it kind of like made me see um, just other areas of my life and kind of like tune into who I am without basketball or who I am
Hmm.
before basketball. And it's like a work in progress for sure. But it was, yeah, it wasn't an easy transition, but I'm glad I went through it because I'm just, I'm very relieved right now.
Hmm. And but you've still found some ways to stay attached to the game. If I'm not mistaken, you did some work with the Brooklyn Nets, or you're still doing some work with the Brooklyn Nets. Can you tell us about
Yep.
what you've been doing there?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I did want to stay involved with the game because I was like, it's still a big part of me and brings me joy. So I got into coaching. And that was also when I moved to the city, to Manhattan. I was done with my master's and all of that. So I left upstate and I moved to Manhattan. And I first coached actually at the United Nations International School in Manhattan, and it
Oh
was
wow.
like the girls' high school team. Spent a year with them, and it was a great year. It was like just that my first year of coaching, and then I kind of wanted to do more of like the camps and the like the summer camps and the trainings and like work with like individuals more than like a team, especially like a high school team. It's a lot of work. So through networking and through like a couple camps that I did, I was able to connect with the director at the Nets Academy. And then he kind of like brought me on board and then it was like, like join the academy team and stuff. So I work with them part time. I work full time at a data company and then I do like a lot of the basketball stuff on the side. So I joined the Nets last summer. Um, Part time and it has been amazing. Like I still involved in the game. I still do what I love and coach like anywhere from like middle schoolers to high schoolers. People are very like passionate, like have dreams and like want to make it to the next level. So it's just nice to like live through them too.
Hmm. And that's awesome. Are you still involved in any way with the Egyptian national team? Do they perhaps use you as a resource for folks trying to come and play ball in the states?
Yeah, I've been actually helping quite a few players over the last like 2 3 years or so. Like their parents reach out to me, and I kind of like either try to connect them with like coaches there, or they are like talking to someone already, and they're just trying to see like, okay, is this a good school? Is this a good program? Or like some of them, their parents are just looking for some comfort, like they are in that position where they're sending their little daughter to college across the world or high school, and they're just trying to kind of like see what the experience is like. So I have been helping people like that, like when I can or when I have the time or when I'm in Cairo, too, and like trying to, be like a useful resource to people in that way.
Yeah, I would imagine that you're probably one of the earlier folks, like you said, to make that jump. So I'm sure a lot of folks are leaning on you for some advice, like you said, the comfort
Yeah.
as well. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for taking us on your career journey. It's really inspiring the fact that you took this giant
Thank
leap,
you.
across the Atlantic to chase your dreams. And I'm happy that you found some purpose after retirement. I know a lot of athletes struggle with that, but you're still able to stay close to the game in your own ways. So, where can people support the work that you do with the Nets, and where can people find you on social media?
Uh, can reach out to me on my Instagram, email, Twitter, anything. It's just Saso Nady, SASONADY. I'm always looking to connect with other folks in the sports industry or like help people where I can. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you're the third or fourth person I've interviewed through that Muslims and Sports Media
Oh,
Slack channel.
awesome.
So it's been an awesome networking tool. So again, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. And it was great meeting you.
Yeah, absolutely. You too, Khaled. Thank you.